If you play this piano, I'll marry you." Her voice was loud enough for the whole ballroom to hear. The wealthy guests laughed, their champagne glasses clinking. They weren't laughing with him, they were laughing at him. The black janitor just stood there, silent, as if her words had floated past without touching him. But what happened next? No one in that room will ever forget. The ballroom shimmered with gold light, crystal chandeliers scattering it like rain across marble. Floors, waiters in crisp white shirts moved quietly between tables, carrying silver trays. At the far end, a glossy black grand piano sat untouched until she spoke. "If you play this piano, I'll marry you," the millionaire woman declared, her jeweled hand resting lazily on her glass. The room froze, a ripple of laughter spread. Sharp and cold, he stood in his navy janitor's uniform, a mop leaning against his shoulder. His dark eyes met hers for just a moment, not in anger, not in shame, but with something unreadable. Then he looked back at the floor. They didn't know his name. They didn't know his story. They didn't care. Years ago, he had played a piano in a dimly lit church, his fingers moving like they were born for it. Music had been his escape, his way of speaking without words. But war had taken that from him along with people he loved. He had served overseas, his days filled with sand, heat, and the ache of waiting for letters that sometimes never came. When he returned, the piano was gone, sold to pay for the roof over his mother's head. Now, he cleaned floors for people who never saw him, working night after night in buildings that sparkled but felt empty. And yet, he remembered the sound of the keys under his hands. He remembered the way music could lift a room, break walls, heal wounds. She thought she was mocking him. The guests thought they were watching a joke. But deep inside, something in him stirred an old fire he had almost let die. He walked toward the piano. No one spoke. They just watched. His fingers hovered over the keys, and for a second, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then he played. It wasn't the careful, pretty music of the background players they hired for dinners. It was raw, alive, and aching with beauty. Every note was a memory of home, of loss, of laughter in the middle of fear, of the promises made and broken. The kind of music that reached inside a person and pulled them to their knees. The room changed. The laughter faded, glasses lowered. People turned fully toward him, drawn in. Even the woman who had spoken sat perfectly still, her face unreadable. Now. One man in the corner closed his eyes. A woman wiped her cheek. The air felt thick, heavy with something they didn't expect to feel that night. When the final note hung in the air, he simply stood, gave a small nod, and walked away from the piano. No applause, no bow, just silence, the kind that means the world has shifted in some small but permanent way. As he passed the woman, she reached out as if to speak, but he didn't stop. Somewhere behind him, someone whispered, "That wasn't a janitor. That was a master." Later, people would say it was the most beautiful music they had ever heard. They would remember how the man who cleaned their floors reminded them of the power of dignity, how silence can speak louder than insults, how talent can cut through prejudice like sunlight through glass. And though he never asked for it, Respect followed him from that night forward. True strength, he would tell no one in particular, is not in proving someone wrong, it's in standing so tall they can't ignore the truth. Because the truth had been right there, in the music, for all to hear. If you believe respect should never depend on wealth or status, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Share this story so more people remember that silent strength is never weakness. And for more stories like this, stories that honor dignity and unseen battles, make sure you subscribe.